Back again with fresh coffee.
So what did you just say? You said it was useful to.
The issue is that last set that we just completed before we refreshed our coffees was useful because it allows the rational masculine cognitive individuals to understand the emotional projection of the feminine cognitive left upon them in discourse and alleviates them of responsibility for responding to irrational projection by rational discourse.
Right.
Because it's absolutely not going to help.
The problem is you're stuck with you can't argue with women. I stuck that out there to create flame.
I know. I just there's a I have an interrupt button inside my head, and it's like where you just interrupt that one. It's like
You don't let me get away with anything.
No, you got away with it.
You never know. You don't take the bait, is what I mean.
Oh, I'm not easy to bait. I don't like to be baited. It's not good. It's like that. Just the thought that came to my mind was the woodshed.
Well, I mean, once you realize that they're feeling first and only thinking later if necessary, that we're thinking first and only feeling later if necessary, and you realize that therefore they have to project just like we have to argue, and that it's just like this is going on all the time.
Right.
And the problem is, while we can understand them, they can't understand us. Because they can't imagine that you would think first and feel second if you feel at all.
No, they can't feel like that.
So
that doesn't make any logical. That makes no feeling sensibility at all. I can't feel like that.
Right, and even if then they won't tolerate the fact that what you're saying is that I'm by using reason I'm willing to bear responsibility. And by using emotion, you're not willing to, or what you're really saying is you are, and so that's all that's happening. It's very hard for someone who thinks they're a good person to do that. But I mean, when you're trying to keep the peace and a bunch of people under stagnant environment or stable environment, right, and where you get all your value from interacting with people on frictionless terms. That's great. That works great as long as you don't allow those people to vote. Because the worst thing they can do is complain. But the minute they want to achieve that state by political means, what they're doing is destroying the competitive ability, basically the evolutionary velocity of the populace, which is what we've seen. So I mean, division of labor. Go ahead, complain, generate demand. We'll get late if we fulfill your demands, right? We'll get attention.
Right.
And you'll annoy the fuck out of us if we don't. Believe it or not, this is a pretty good way to operate the universe. I mean, you can't go around and say something like women need to be believed. And I mean, that's just insanity from the evidence on all fronts. And you can't say feminism is all good when look what it did. You can't say women are happier. You can't say that birth rates haven't collapsed. You can't say that friction hasn't increased. You can't say you haven't destroyed the family, which was the Marxist structural intent, right? You can't say that single mothers are very good mothers. What good do you think you're getting out of this, except that what you did is you ran up the tax revenues and redistribution revenues to the point where they're unsustainable without infinite growth. So I mean, everything you could do wrong at every scale, you did wrong. Men and women can't even get along anymore because you made it into band-aiding. So I mean, if you want to destroy society, I mean, you did it. You want to commit suicide. genocide by suicide. You've certainly done it. And if you want to destroy the one civilization that had any semblance of having female equality for the past 5,000 years, well, you destroyed that too. And if you wanted to create the impression that women were wonderful, well, you just ruined 5,000 years of us trying to find a way to treat women with virtue rather than as slaves, because basically women are lying, scheming, hyper-consumptive, whoring, undermining at all every available antisocial, selfish monsters at every opportunity. Because what you've done is you've basically made men think that again, despite especially the past.
We didn't want to be reminded.
You don't want to be reminded that that's what you are. And so what did
lack of self-restraint? The women are not restrained anymore.
Hyper consumption and hypergamy are only possible if you limit their behavior. Now, okay, I'm happy to engage in many wives for one man. I'm happy to restore the historical traditions that women do all the manual labor while men tend to the animals, and we treat women like slaves. You want to go back to that? Well, because there's no value of women in the workforce, it turns out.
Okay.
I mean, there was
this is a detour. This isn't helping you at all.
Oh no, I'm trying to say this isn't helping anybody, right? It doesn't. I don't want to go back to that. I want to go back to, because I love women. I want to go back to thinking women are freaking awesome. We should be on pedestals. We can serve them. In exchange, we get hugs and cuddles. I mean, I just want to go back to that. I don't want women to hate men, but I mean, if you created a religion of man hating, what do you think men are going to do? They're going to respond in kind. I just think it's foolish. Anyway.
There you have it. Now we're going to talk about the Ukraine-Russia thing.
Okay.
And there was about a time preference, I suppose, in understanding how to properly resolve this. What's the most effective resolution evolutionarily or across various timescales?
Oh, there's a couple of axes of decidability.
Okay. What are those?
The first one I want to get off the table is thinking that Russia can solve the woke problem.
Solve the what problem?
Woke problem.
Okay.
If you need Daddy Putin to solve the woke problem for you, it just means that you deserve to be destroyed by it, by woke. Because you're too gutless and cowardly to solve it yourselves.
Okay.
So that's the first one. And an awful lot is being driven by that.
I'm listening.
The second axis I can think of is the conservative and libertarian, which is that we have no place fighting that war. It's Europe's war. Europe should be fighting it.
Okay.
And no more wars, no more paying for more wars, whatever.
Okay.
And this is common in the Republican.
It's what?
Common in the Republican Party. It's common among libertarians.
Okay.
I'm not doing these in the right order, but the third.
That's okay. We'll get there later.
The third one is that the justification of Russian behavior because they believe NATO is an aggressor. In other words, they agree with Russia that we're imposing on and this is a form of self-hatred. It's similar to the woke.
Oh, that's interesting. Is there more?
Yeah, and I say it's not our problem, right? I said that's right.
That's conservative liberal versus European
Right.
war.
And then there's, which one did I just say?
The justification of NATO versus Russia.
All right, so that should be second, right? So that should be the second one. It's not our problem, should be third. I'm forgetting one. It's different. The not our problem is economic is one thing. The end result is relativism, is that it doesn't matter all, you know, all political systems are the same and equally corrupt and all that matters. So why does it matter which one has it? It's sort of the nihilistic take. So that's 4 points in
Yeah.
the spectrum.
Yeah.
So that's that. Those are the four criticisms. So the second criticism, the second axis is time preference.
Okay.
In other words, in order to hold time preference, you have to have the knowledge to hold it.
Okay.
And so, for example, I look at the very long period, and so I realize that the German economic model is run out of customers and population, that Russia is running out of population, economy, and time.
Okay.
And that France is the enemy of Europe.
Okay.
And that France is a greater proponent of woke and such than Germany, Eastern European, Russia.
Okay.
So my time preference is that, oops, can I do that? And lastly, that the England, just as the Bronze Age developed, the Bronze Age, right? The Indo-European expansion, the European experience, the agrarian age, the Bronze Age, the Indo-European expansion, the axial age recovery, the Mediterranean age, right? All these things. That the explosion with the restoration of Aristotle to the Europe brought about an explosion from northern Italy up to England. But over time, England, for a variety of mercantile reasons, it's happening. The words Navy trade civs advanced faster than continental civs. So the British invented the modern state, and this worked its way next into France, which rebelled, Germany, which rebelled, Eastern Europe, Russia, and Jews, and now into Islam and China, India. And everybody rebels against this sort of sequence. But what they're really not grasping is that it's the change in economy between the agrarian and modern state means there's no really any value to more population and territory like there is under agrarianism. Matter of fact, it kind of works the opposite. Sort of want to be Switzerland. And there's no value to big states either. You want to have small states because then you can specialize in innovation and adaptation. The value of a large state is war and debt, which go together. So what we're seeing is the end that we tend to think about the Industrial Revolution and the First World War as a big change, but that's only a change to colonialism, the exhaustion of the thought that we could bring people forward instead of people need to bring themselves forward. The post-World War is we were trying to help people bring themselves forward. Our greatest success, believe it or not, was China until they decided to be crazy about it. And so we brought the whole world out of ignorance and poverty. But the longer cycle is the continuation of the transformation from agrarian empires that benefit from territory and population to industrial federations that benefit from economic productivity despite territory and population. So what we're seeing is the spread of the natural evolution of states under the current economic and scientific model, and the archaic states continuing to resist, as all cultures have resisted.
Yeah.
Because the elites in those countries, the backward ones of Russia, Iran, and China, are trying to preserve the rent-seeking of the elites against the interests of the people. And there's been no opportunity to change that over. So we haven't had a revolution in those three places yet, sufficient to displace and replace those three empires, but it's deterministic. In other words, you can't get out of this. It's an evolutionary necessity.
No, I understand what you're saying.
That you have to.
I don't agree with the analysis entirely.
Well, I mean, I did the best I could in a.
No, I'm gonna present my interpretation, which is an alternative, which you can consider.
Wait, let me.
Oh, I apologize.
No, don't apologize. I want to make sure I'm finished with it. So we've sort of reached this different thing. So if your temporal interpretation is that you're trying to unite Germany and German technology and Russian territory and resources, so that the German German intermarium Russian civilizations can resist being defeated by the Central Asian from the Russian over again, and the Chinese from the Chinese Chinese north and the Russian far east. You're trying to defeat the capture of Russia. Europe needs the energy Russia has. It needs the resources and needs the population in order to compete on the world stage, because there just aren't enough Europeans left compared to the world. So we just need that to come together. France is the enemy of that happening because they want it, and Russia wants it. But the only way to make it work is with the three peoples that are the Germans, the Intermariums, the Germanic Slavs, and the Eastern Slavs, which are the Finno-Slavs of the Russians. And so meanwhile, the United States, the Scandinavian countries, India, the United States, Canada, New Zealand, and Australia, we are not world island states. We are island states in the world. And so we are naval, and we need to maintain naval powers. And so the natural inclination is that way, just as China's orbit and India's orbit, and probably the Middle Eastern orbits will continue to form. Although the problem, again, is what we call the Turkic people, Central Asian people, they haven't formed a civilization yet, and that's the interior threat to Russia. So, if you look at your long time preference, I'm just looking at it as, how does this work out so that Europeans are in the best condition as people going forward? And so I'm trying to find out, I'm favoring anything that results in the exclusion of France as the leader of Europe, and the rise of Germany, Poland, Intermarium, and Russia as the core of Europe. Like other people, I suspect France will continue to become a North African country, and it will treat the Mediterranean as their sea, because they have the military to do that. And the world island will remain the world island from the Germanic countries over to the Far East. And so I think that's most grand strategists look at this problem pretty much that way. Different portions of Africa. In other words, the conflict of civilizations is returning. And we have some immature actors. Africa looks like it's doing fine to me. I don't know. I mean, it's given the state it's in and the time it's had, it's hard, but everything looks right to me. India looks right. I can't understand if they can keep so centralized, but I think they will want to, because there's a pretty serious race distribution across India that will require. Otherwise, you end up with the North and South Italy problem in India at an enormous scale, and that would be bad for the southeastern side of India. China is a problem for now. They're going to run out of juice, but right now they're a problem. And their fascist model, is extremely effective at strategic investment. So you can't really ever count them out. And they have an ego chip on their shoulder like no other country in the world. So I expect that to be a problem. So when I look at this conflict of civilizations over the century, and I want civilizations to persist and to do so in peace, relative peace and stability, then I'm looking at it with that time horizon. Now, if you look at it as every time horizon, like the woke people, the nihilistic people, uh, the standard Republicans let's save some money business, and we need to get out of Europe, and Europe needs to take its own responsibility. You realize that we've built this world, and that we've dragged the world kicking and screaming out of poverty. And once we started thinking that we didn't have to do this anymore, that world started to fall apart, and it's fallen apart. And the problem is, be nice if we could pick up our toys and go home. But all we do by picking up our toys and go home is decrease our standard of living by 40% down to that of Europe, and basically give up on Europe. So that's how I look at this problem. So now you can look at it from another direction. Look at it from another direction. That's it.
Okay, that's what I thought, but I wanted to be certain. It's interesting because the time scale I'm operating on is shorter, because I was interested in the resolution of this particular conflict that's occurring in the Ukraine at the moment, and I see the larger scale and time frame that you're looking at with regard to the civilizational. I don't have any contention with that.
So you say I'm talking about too big a
you extended the time scale outside the scope of this particular conflict, and that's okay, because I agree with the general tenor of your analysis.
Well, the idea here is just that you have to cause Russia's big scary threat to fail, so they recognize openly and publicly, not only in their government but domestically, that their only solution is to integrate with Europe. That's their only survival. It's for the benefit of everybody. But in order to do that, they have to give up on the kleptocratic government. Do they have? And their problem is that they think that you can't, that liberalism needs to allow for, rainbow this, sexual that, and whatever, and it doesn't.
I know, but I don't see the conflict in exactly the terms that you do.
Okay.
Which is, I regard the United States and Europe as already conquered by woke, and acting as a globalist imperial structure, attempting to superimpose its global imperial ambitions upon Russia and China, with whom we are at war. And so,
well, that's a question of relativism. In other words, you're saying that these systems don't produce different things, and you're saying that we can't fix woke.
No, I'm saying we can't fix woke, but there's an existential threat here, because you're risking a nuclear war with these people.
There's no risk of nuclear war. Nobody thinks that. Nobody.
No real responsible people.
No responsible people think that's going to happen.
I understand you, and I'm not happen to be one of those not responsible people that does think it may have. It's more chance than in 1980.
No.
Well, okay. I'm not here to argue that point.
If it were China, yeah, but it's Russia. They're like, they might be gangsters, but I mean, we think of it this way. The thing, Putin actually obeys Russian law. Why do you think he did his conscript? Yeah. He actually obeys Russian law.
Yeah.
Right. The bureaucracy actually works. He's not stupid or crazy. Right. He fell into a trap that all dictators do. And my opinion is he only fell into it because he was sick, because I've been there, and that's what happens. You do stupid shit.
Well, so it's like this is, I see the issue is this: I want a peaceful resolution of this, which I don't see in the same light as you do. to achieve the same long-term strategic goals that you are mentioning before.
We're going to get a peaceful resolution in sometime in the next year, a little over a year and a half.
Okay.
And the reason is going to be because they're out of fucking options in Russia. Now, Russia can mobilize its entire economy, but the people aren't going to support it. You can see them leaving already. They've already lost, I don't know, 1 million of the intellectual class plus. I mean, they're educated. I mean, they can't fucking sustain it. They only see the thing is you look at that $140 million population, but you realize there's only 6.5 million working age males that are able to.
Oh,
it's just not a good. They're demographically fucked, so they can't defend 11 time zones. They can't even build railroads and roads across and stable internet across 11 time zones. Right? All they're doing is raping they really are. They're raping the regions. I don't know if you know how their tax system works, but they pull money out of the city to the region, and they take the money from the region to Moscow. Then they redistribute what they want, but the answer is that's how they bribe everybody. And then they keep most of the money in Moscow and St. Petersburg because they're burning everything east of the Urals, right? And they're killing it. And what's happening is the people are coming. Well, of course, they're doing that because they want to keep St. Petersburg and Moscow happy because that's who could overthrow the government because it's nearby. But the fundamental problem is how do you retain all those time zones, which is where all the oil is?
Right.
Resources are and all the gas, and the gas is up north, for Christ's sake. So, I mean, it's suicide. And so one of the reasons they want Ukraine is just that reason. If we lose everything east of the Urals, Ukraine can feed the whole fucking Russia.
Okay.
So, I mean, they're making absolutely rational, logical decisions. The thing is that we actually need that land. I mean, Europe needs that. Right? And Russia already sent back Eastern Europe 100 years, 70 years. And the people are still just catching up now. Now, Russia's been set back another 20 years now by the past 8 years, maybe 30. If it goes on much longer, it's not going to make any difference. So you have our strategy on the West has been to exhaust Russia's stores, which is why they made them use so much artillery, right? Trying to make them exhaust their stores so they can't fight and bring them to the table. The problem is they committed atrocities. And Ukrainians...
I understand this argument.
Wait a minute, and so the Ukrainians, because of the atrocities, won't give up. So it doesn't matter what we want to do. The Ukrainians are going to want to probably take Crimea and give them Donetsk, or take Donetsk and Luhansk and give them Crimea. There's going to be something there because Crimea is too valuable because the oil is offshore. All right. And so they're going to want to have Crimea. They don't want Donetsk and Luhansk. They can't afford to rebuild it anyway.
All right.
So it's probably going to end up something along those lines. I don't know. So I think we'll get but I don't think it's going to happen soon. And I don't think we're going to have a nuclear war. I mean, Putin's out of options. I mean, if he escalates, he's dead. He won't live. He'll be dead. I mean, if they don't kill him, we will. It's really easy to kill him, actually. It's just.
I don't want to go down this road.
Yeah.
Like this is
So now you tell me your story.
The way I see this is we have a criminal government in the West, we have a criminal government in the Ukraine, and you have a criminal government, which you're calling a criminal government in Russia.
Yep.
So you would call this the relativist argument.
They're all criminally differently, but which people are suffering?
The people are suffering.
Yeah, I understand that, but
it's like this. It's like, how does prolonging the war alleviate their suffering?
How does shortening it alleviate their suffering?
They stop suffering faster.
No. This is a confusing. You're mad. You look at woke and you're mad about it, right? because you look at the cost it's imposed upon you and your people. So do you want retribution?
No, sir. No,
Do you want
sir.
retribution against woke?
No,
What do you want?
not my goal here at all.
No, I'm not
My
asking.
goal here at all is to alleviate my people in the United States of the distraction which is afforded to the Western world by this war, which is I regard as entirely as a distraction. It is not a meaningful question.
So why is woke gone out of? Why has all the woke gone out and the wars taken over, and European civilizations come together tighter? We have populism is succeeding now, where woke was succeeding before. So how does that argument fly?
I think that the given time that the Marxist woke thing is a burning ember that will run out of fuel. It has no fuel.
I think it has a lot of legs left. I think it has a lot of legs left.
It's like a cockroach. It has 6.
It's a believable lie.
I don't know, but it's like it's increasingly non-believable because the lies they keep doubling down on lies, and it becomes increasingly obvious that they're lying. So it's like this: give it time.
That's two different things. So what you're saying is our patience for it will wear out, but I don't believe I don't believe it'll.
No. There's going to be a hardcore ember that won't ever believe the truth.
Correct.
The issue is the conflict is psychological over the middle.
Correct.
Which is how the rational people who are like intermediary between feminine and masculine cognitive style, how do they react politically? That's the only question.
I agree. I just don't understand what that has to do with this broader issue. I mean,
it's a matter of time before we throw out the woke.
Yeah, but what does it have to do with the Ukraine thing? I don't get it.
The Ukraine thing is an excuse to impose more authoritarian strictures upon the population of Western Europe and the United States.
But we're not seeing that. We're seeing a rise of populism. We're seeing
that is not the effect of this. They're trying to counteract that by distraction. The governmental forces. That's my opinion.
In other words, the government's continuing its mission no matter what.
They're going to. They're trying to distract the population from true political reform.
You're not. So you're just making You're making a temporal pragmatic decision because you don't want Ukrainian conflict to distract attention.
I see it. That's why I worry about nuclear conflict, because it's like you don't know what kind of attention-seeking behavior is going to occur there, which is outside the scope of military necessity.
I don't see that. I mean, to me, these are two different issues.
Yes,
easily solved, different both of them, and that I see conservatives as useless pussies that won't do anything about it.
Wait. You've decomposed me again, sir. I apologize for that. What about the conservatives?
Useless pussies.
Why are they that?
Because, what a bunch of ass clowns. Who
represents this crowd?
I show up and I do fine with the left, and I get canceled by the right. January 6th shows up and it's fucking ass clownage. Right?
I regard that as a counterintelligence operation by the FBI without any merit whatsoever.
There was no I knew who was in charge. That's we were talking about it beforehand. We all said, I'm not going. And not our guys. The guys in the other groups said we're not going because these guys are in charge and it's going to be a bunch of ass clowns. What did it turn out to be? It didn't matter what they got. What did they set as demands?
I don't even know.
They didn't have any. They had a frat party.
Yeah, I regarded it as trouble from the get-go myself.
So it's fucking children. So what happens every time we try to do anything smart with the right? The boys, the rad mad boys shit on everything. So it's the problem. You can't make anything adult happen. And so all you do is end up making it is proving the left is right. about the right. The left is right.
I'm writing that in my book because that quote is quotable. The left is right about the right.
Ass clowns.
I think that I was watching some of this, and it's like I think that it's agitators. I honestly do. That's my opinion.
Oh, I've just spent so much time with them. What you got is they're so mad, and they're so emotional, and they're so masturbatory, self-interested. In other words, the disagreeable male is his own problem. In other words, how do you
He's like border. He's this far from being a criminal. Is all you're
right?
saying.
And so they're useless. So this is what we figured out is that you can't do anything until it's the center right. You have to be able to. You literally have to hose down the hard right and keep them out, and shut them up, shut them off, keep them out of everything because they literally turn everything to shit because they are shit because they're one step away from criminals.
They are all but criminal, yeah. And I regard them as easy to agitate and motivate.
That's what I said. I try to teach them one thing: never take the bait. If you could teach them to not take the bait, they would be useful. But John and I figured out we could try it, right? We ran a test. They failed. You can't run. You can't get these boys, these rad mad boys, to not take the bait. It's not like you got to be Gandhi and pacifist, but you can't take the bait. If the left comes up and they want to start something, you just give them hugs. That's what we did. I made fun of black people and the black guys there, and they were laughing. Right? We were having fun. Nothing. There was no hate there. All right. So what did we get any bad press?
Yes. No bad press.
But what does the right do? They take that fucking hook all the way down into the gut. They swallow it. They thrash around. They feel proud for being pulled out of the fucking lake like the goddamn catfish they are.
Okay.
They're suckers, morons, and you can't control them. Why? Because what happens with disagreeables? You maintain that you're right despite the fucking evidence.
That's right.
So that's what they do. They maintain that they're right. Well, you're right to be angry, but that's it. You don't know what to do. And then if you get somebody, it's like Zig Heil, and you just want to cut their fucking heads off, right? I mean, all you're doing when you do that is you're saying you are a disagreeable, semi-criminal, unfit for political voice. So I admit I'm a fucking idiot. I have the same problem. I overestimate the common man all the time. It's what I do. It's my single greatest failing in life. Every mistake I make in life is overestimating. And I'm overestimated because I'm a good Christian, good Catholic, and I believe in the goodness of my fellow man. And the freaking right proves me wrong every fucking time. And it's like John said, for every 1,000 good men on the right, there's one good man. For every 1,000 men on the right, there's one good one who's responsible. And you could tell them in a heartbeat because they don't talk. Anybody who starts talking smack, whether they're fundamentalists or Nazis they're fucking idiots. It's a guaranteed. Because responsible men don't talk smack. They do.
Yeah.
And so when I look at it, I'm like, the only way out of this problem is the center right. So we have to abandon the right. And the problem is, I'm looking at it and I'm like, this is going to sound horrible, but I'm glad they're fucking silenced because they shit on everything. They're literally, the mad boys are literally cancer for getting any change done because all they do is prove they're unworthy and unfit for political participation. And so I said, we have to wait till the Overton window moves over, but I call it the middle, but it's the center right and the center left. And so that's what we're doing, and it's happening. But, we originally thought we can turn the Mad Boys into a movement if we can get them to listen to us. And you can't.
Couldn't make that happen.
Can't do it because they want to hear Jesus on one end, God on another, church on another, ethno-whiteism on the other, and Nazi on the. I mean, it's just
Right.
one stream of morons after another. You can't do it. You have to find
Because they're fundamentally they
they're extremists,
they're expressing their bias through madness.
right? And it's extremism,
Yes.
right? I mean, the church is good, ethnocentrism is good, but you still have to take 350 million people and build a government that can run for them.
Yes.
You can't just go out there and think that you the 2% of you assholes are going to be in charge of anything. Fuck, I wouldn't let you be in charge of my goddamn car keys. And I got burned for it. I mean, I lost any political potential I have as an individual by trying to save those guys, turn them into a movement. And I got burned for it. And it's like, this is what they do to everybody. Anybody that gets any progress, they ruin. So the only thing to do is hose them down and keep them out because they're fucking cancer. We just are cancer.
Sorry.
Doesn't mean that, if push comes to shove and lead things start floating through the air at very high velocity, that they're not useful, but they're not useful politically.
We understand.
They're actually harmful. So, that's just the reality of it. So we just decided that, Brandon and I rode back in the car together. We had, 8 hours to talk. And it was like, this is the next 5 or 10 years for us, is we're going to do this. Because John was like, we can't fix it. We can't. They're not fixable.
Right.
Do anything with people like this. You just can't.
Right.
So
that's interesting.
So I look at it as, when I look at the woke problem, I see this as fixable. And it's like the tendency of conservatives to bundle everything into efficiency. There's no such thing. You don't see the left doing that. They're happy to work 6 different angles at the same time.
Well, I know. I look at the defection of Tulsi Gabbard as emblematic of the peeling away of the extreme left, which I call the woke. They're the extreme left. They're disintegrating their own party. So it's like the moderates are shifting to the right.
No, they're shifting back to the center, right? I mean,
I would say that the Overton window has been dragged far too far, and it's like it's recovering to a more.
So they're getting there. The thing is, we still need to fix this fundamental problem, and honestly, we need to purge this religion of woke. It needs to go. We need to do what the anti-communists in the 50s failed to do, because we need to because they'll just keep inventing it.
Yes.
They're
very creative.
Well, I mean, we're creative with getting rid of evil. They're creative with making evil. The difference is we know they're evil and they don't.
Everybody thinks they're doing good.
Yeah.
Because they prefer that.
So in my view, we solved that problem. I don't know why throwing money and equipment at Ukrainians so they can solve this is like the cheapest, easiest way to solve a long-term problem. And the longer it goes on, the more exhausted everybody gets, the more unified Europe gets. And what I see in the timing is, you see, just like COVID brought forward the economic and social crisis, this is bringing forward the German crisis. And of course, what we really need is Germany to restore her position. And they're only going to. Germany needs to wake up and recover, and lose its post-war guilt.
I think that's the exact same situation I would call for in the solution to this.
Right. So
it's just a matter of means.
Well, I mean, the thing is, this is accelerating because the German economy didn't have much longer to go.
Yeah, it's at the end of its ropes.
Now it's at the end of its ropes, and they have they have a blamable external reason to be reassertive of German identity and competency in Europe. And so I see that axis working out well. So I was really angry because, of course, Ukrainians are my people, and I'd rather live in Ukraine or Russia than America because I love them. I mean, I love them with
I just like
every
this. It's
cell
like,
of my body. And so I was really angry. But if it's going to accelerate this problem, accelerate this solution of
yeah,
restored Western civilization and possibly uniting Christendom, I'm going to look at it as God's doing his fucking job again. I don't know. I mean,
well, I hate to say it. That's pretty much what I see working all around.
yeah.
Because it's like the lefties are doing things that are causing the alienation and defection of their own group, and causing the center to wake up and become aware and become properly centered as opposed to biased to the left. And this is what it takes, and it's just a matter of time in service, and everything's working out nicely.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, I don't have to. I have my own personal opinions and biases, which I don't expect to become indulged by any means. I just observe and like to think about it, I guess.
I mean, I think we all we talked about how the first hour and whatever we spent on, if you have a minor bias in your attribution of value, you calculate predictions based on that value, right? And so that's it. So the problem I always say to people is look at the field of opportunities, and that means across time as well,
Right.
and evaluate them on each of those, and try to keep yourself out of it. It's fucking impossible, right? And so then you look at the field and say, okay, well, the truth is any one of these three will work, right? But and so I'll just move the ball forward on those three, and then one will drop off, and you'll say, and then one will come back alive, and I'm back at three again, right? And so you just move the ball forward.
Right.
When you look at a field of opportunities, you keep a set of playing cards ready,
Right.
and always do that. But we always want to simplify to one. And what you really want to do is say, I have 3 or 4 playing cards going here. I'm going to put that one down. This one's back up. Like, the idea that I said the other day, I just said, oh, I see what they're going to do is they're not going to go for both Donbass and Crimea. They're going to go for some trade-off there because at this point, those things don't have the value they had, right? Crimea's got a point now, but it's not clear that Donbass has any value, right? So they can have a trade-off there. And I'm like, oh, I see. Well, then 3 days later, this is what you hear them saying, right? And so you start to see these things emerge, and so you can't like pick.
Right. No, so to me, the Ukraine thing is like it only comes down to my personal action. What do I do?
Yes.
Right. And it's like, okay, it's a sideshow to me, which is I just watch the show and I'm interested in the show and I'm curious about the show, but it makes no difference on my personal actions. I continue to work my own opportunities.
And that's the right choice. I mean, on the other hand, this has personal meaning for me.
Yes.
Because I'm there. But same thing for Russia. I love Russian people. I don't like seeing dead Russian soldiers.
We are in agreement.
I don't like it. I want it to fucking stop. If I start seeing, it's one thing where this is true what they're doing. They're scooping the deregs. They're basically using it as a cleanup, genetic cleanup, so to speak, or right. They're pulling.
I understand your point.
All right. And if they're just throwing meat at it, I mean, it's cruel, but I mean, at least it's not young Russian guys who are going to build the future. Right. But I mean, they start pulling young Russian men and throwing them in the meat grinder. That's a sin again. I mean, I see that as a sin against our people. That's a sin against God. You can't do that. So we have to we have to stop. But I'm just looking at this as like they're running out of fucking options. They only got 200. They only got 200. Like 200 of those missiles left. They're running. They can't defend the fucking country anymore. They can't defend their own goddamn borders if they spend much more.
Well,
So
like I say, I just watch
we
it
can't
go.
let that happen. We can't let that happen. We need an intact Russia. If that fucking thing falls apart, it's a goddamn nightmare. There's not enough for them, for everybody. The fucking world war will happen over that. Oh, who gets to pick up the pieces now? It'll be a fucking nightmare. We can't let Russia fall apart. Well, the only way you get to Russia fall apart is the only reason Russia's not as rich as Norway, which is pretty rich, is the Russian government. There's no reason that isn't a rich country.
I understand.
Angry.
I detected an internal inconsistency here, however.
I don't think so, but go ahead.
Well, yeah, the internal inconsistency is this: you appear to be interested in prolonging the conflict at the expense of Russian stability and arguing for Russian stability.
No, I'm saying that if that we have to find a way of exiting that fixes both problems of stability and integration. See, my view is that we have to. Russia can't survive long term.
I get you. I get that.
So I just want an off ramp. The problem is you got to think about. I understand there's a certain thing to understanding Russian mentality and culture and how the Kremlin works.
Right.
And it's not. It's a mafia, right? He's the head. He's the godfather, right? And so there's all these favors and relationships and stuff. And so the problem is that he has to have a way of getting out that doesn't get him killed and someone worse in. Right. And what he's trying to do that I see is he's trying to show we can't do this. That's what I see. Right. Without looking
weak.
And then he can blame it all on the military for lying to him. And so I'm just like, this is going to play out, right? Let it play out. It's going to cost some people, but it's going to cost, there's always going to be, there's no way out of this. You got to think of it from his perspective. Right. When you look at Russian demographics, he's fucked. He's the last president of Russia. So he wasn't being stupid. He was the depth of corruption. We had no idea, right? It's like even the worst beliefs we had about the level of corruption in the military, right? The condition of things. It's like to the power of 100 worse than we thought. And you got to imagine he's in a similar position. Because if you listen to people who feed him information, the people who left, they say he only reads the stuff that's marked top secret. So right. He reads the stuff that's getting him through the channels of the people who are there to lie to him.
Yeah.
So it's like he's fucked.
Well,
we got to get him out. We got to get him a way out. And the problem is what we want a negotiated deal so that we can integrate Russia into the European defense system and guarantee Russian borders. That's what they need.
Well, it's like this, though. The issue is the people who are in positions of authority in the United States and the Western Europe don't appear to be anything but women and children.
Our politicians are shit. Europe's politicians are even worse shit.
Yeah.
Right? DOD in Germany and America is not, and England is not shit. That's where the grown-ups are. So, what we need to do is make it safe for the DOD to do that.
Okay.
Now, of course, the enemy you're talking about doesn't want this to happen. Right? Because it kills woke, right? You unite Germany and Russia.
That's right.
And woke's dead, right? So I'm not telling you you're wrong, right?
I know.
Right? But we have to make it. This is what we got to do, because that's got to happen. We can't afford Russia to go. Fucking white people can't afford Russia to go away. Europe can't afford Russia to go away.
Right.
Russians can't afford Russia to go away. And Americans can't afford monetarily for Russia to go away. In other words, Europeans need Russia and Russia needs Europe. I mean, you need it. And we can't afford to do all that anymore because it costs us too much to police the World Petroleum Network. Moreover, our interest, if that happens, is to destroy the World Petroleum Network we met and drive the certain people who disagree with us back into the fucking dark ages. So I mean, we got to kill woke. We get to kill woke this way if we win, but we don't kill it by becoming Russian. We kill it by putting the two great powers together, and we keep Eastern Europe and Russia in the anti-woke zone of such influence that they because that's all it's coming out of France, most of it, France and Jews. All right, I'm done.
All right, Kurt.
I
appreciate taking a minute with you.
Love you, brother. So tomorrow I have a bunch of stuff to go over with you.
Very good. I look forward to it.
Take care, brother.
Yes, sir.